Hello dear students, hope you all are doing fine. We are going to start with chapter 7, Respiration in Plants, the first chapter from your second term syllabus. Now to begin this chapter, we need to know about what exactly respiration is. So let's define what is respiration. It is a biochemical process, okay, in which respiratory substrates, okay, respiratory substrates, that is the chemical compounds which are used inside the cell to basically produce energy. These are chemical substances which are used inside the cell to produce energy. Respiratory substrates could be your glucose, which is the most preferred. Even if say glucose is not present, then sugars like galactose can be used, right? Even say if these two are also absent, then we can target amino acids. Even if amino acids are not available, then fatty acids, okay? Even glycerol. So almost all organic compounds which makes our biomolecules, okay, they can be used as respiratory substrates. So these are basically substances which are involved in this biochemical process. What happens after that? So biochemical processes in which respiratory substrates like the following gets oxidized, okay, in the presence or absence of oxygen. So when I say these two words, presence and absence, you need to understand oxidation can occur even if oxygen is absent. Please understand this. So we know from the knowledge of chemistry that if hydrogen is removed from any chemical compound, that is also considered as oxidation, right? So addition of oxygen, that is also oxidation. Removal of hydrogen, that is also oxidation. Why are we doing all these things? We are doing all these things. So it's a biochemical process in which respiratory substrates such as the following gets oxidized in the presence or absence of oxygen to produce energy. And this energy which is produced is in the form of a chemical compound. And the name of that chemical compound is your ATP. You know the full form of ATP, adenosine triphosphate. Okay. By releasing waste such as or byproducts such as carbon dioxide, water vapor, in certain cases ethanol, okay, using specific enzymes, right? Using what? Specific enzymes. Now, in respiration process, right, we are breaking respiratory substrates, and biochemical reactions in which we break things, these type of metabolic reactions are actually called as catabolic reactions. So please remember that respiration is a catabolic reaction. I believe it is clear. Now, moving further to understand about the respiration process occurring in plants. Now, one thing that you need to understand is breathing is not respiration. Breathing is completely different from the process called respiration. Why are they different? Because breathing is merely physical exchange of gases. This is physical exchange of gases. Getting the point? Whereas respiration is a biochemical process, it's not a physical process. And in this process, we are producing something which is called as ATP, which we are never producing in the process called breathing. So breathing is important to bring in oxygen, which could be utilized inside the cell, right? So respiration occurs inside the cell, and therefore it is also referred to as cellular respiration. We also commonly call this as cellular respiration. So when we talk about uh, you know respiration process, one thing becomes very important to understand is the main aim of this process is to produce energy. That means glucose is a chemical, right? Glucose has a formula C6H12O6, right? Where 6 carbon atoms, hydrogen atoms which are 12 in number, oxygen atoms which are 6 in number, they are basically chemically bonded. And every chemical bond contains some amount of energy. So in the process of oxidation, what are we going to do? We are going to release that chemical energy. Okay, we release this chemical energy, and this chemical energy is getting stored in the form of what? Adenosine diphosphate is added with a phosphate ion to make something which is called as ATP. Clear? And these ATP can be used for various cellular activities. Okay, like when we talk about cellular activities, it could be transport of substances within the cell, might be the division of the cell, making new things inside the cell, transporting things outside the cell or bringing things inside the cell. There are many such processes which are dependent on ATP. Okay, and without ATP, in fact, the cell will strive. In fact, the cell will struggle to survive. And you understand, if the cell dies, what is ultimately going to happen? The tissues, they are going to die. If the tissues die, the organs will automatically stop working. And eventually, if an organ stops working, the organ system of that particular organism will stop working or function in an abnormal way, right? So you understand that this is a very important basic process that actually gives us the required ATP. I believe it is clear. Now we are going to see in which type of processes carbon dioxide is released, in which type of processes water is released in the form of vapor, where is ethanol produced, and is there any other chemical which can be produced in respiration. Okay, so please remember that we are actually talking about, specifically we are actually talking about respiration which is occurring in the cell, but the chapter is dealing with respiration in plants. So are the plants made of cells? Yes. So if we are studying a generalized concept related to respiration, it can be applied to almost all the cells including our plant. Getting the point? Now I want to give you some idea regarding what exactly is our ATP. So what is the full form of ATP? adenosine triphosphate. Okay, it is adenosine triphosphate. Now, this ATP is basically produced from raw materials called ADP, which is diphosphate, this is triphosphate, and phosphate ions. Okay, once they get added, they will basically form a high energy phosphate compound that will be called as ATP. Right? Now, when we talk about the process of respiration, okay, respiration is dependent on enzymes. It is dependent on who? Enzymes. It is these enzymes who are actually involved in breaking, okay, the glucose molecules. Let's say the glucose is the most preferred respiratory substrate for the cell. So what is going to happen? The glucose will be broken down by the enzymes, and this will not take place in a single step. Normally, when we talk about respiration, the equation that comes into our head is C6H12O6, which is our glucose or a hexose sugar, right? It basically combines with 6 molecules of oxygen, isn't it? And then what do they give out? Is 6 molecules of carbon dioxide. And what do they release further? They release 6 molecules of water. Along with this, something called energy is released. And this is the energy which is to be stored in the form of ATP. Yeah, some of the energy is always lost in the form of heat, right? Because not all the energies in this catabolic process can be captured to synthesize ATP. Okay, some of them are lost in the form of heat. Now, please understand a very important concept here, that we have written down the net equation of respiration. And this particular equation talks about the overall reaction. It, in details, if you want to study respiration, what you are going to see, it is not a single step equation. In fact, there are several steps which are basically going to occur, and several different intermediates would be formed. Certain intermediates are in fact used for synthesis of different chemical substances inside the cell. Okay, so when we look into the whole story of respiration, the overall thing is, it's not a single step equation. It's in fact a representation of the whole process, right? So one important note that we can take, it's not a single step process. In fact, we can say multi-step process. And when I use the word multi-step, in every step, you will require a specific enzyme. So multi-step, multi-enzymatic, or multi-enzymatic, multi-step process. Are we clear about the point? So when we talk about the process of respiration, please mind it that it is going to occur inside the cell. So I'll just give you an overview of cellular respiration first. Let's consider this to be a cell. Say this is our cell. Say this is a particular animal cell that we have. Now the cell will receive glucose as the organism performs, nutrition. Glucose must be available to the cell, right? Then what next is oxygen gases needs to diffuse inside, right? What exactly is going to happen is this glucose is not going to utilize this oxygen immediately. In fact, the glucose will undergo a 10-step breakdown process. What I say, a 10-step breakdown process. And that 10-step breakdown process is what we call as glycolysis. We call it glycolysis. So glycolysis involves how many steps? there will be 10 different steps. Why 10 steps? Because 10 different intermediates are formed. And as I already told you, it is a multi-step process. So in every step, there must be a separate specific enzymes involved. Okay. So what happens is this glucose in the process of glycolysis is eventually going to get converted into two molecules of pyruvic acid. So conversion of glucose into two molecules of pyruvic acid is what we call as glycolysis. So it's not a single step process. So what has happened to our glucose? The glucose, after entering inside the cell, has basically been broken down into two molecules of pyruvic acid. So when I'm telling the or using the word broken down, please understand it's a 6-carbon molecule, and these pyruvic acids are in fact 3-carbon molecules. So what has happened? A single 6-carbon molecule has been broken down into two 3-carbon molecules. Getting the point, right? So what is going to happen to this pyruvic acid next? This pyruvic acid will eventually get converted into acetyl CoA. What is going to happen? Is going to get converted into something called acetyl CoA. And after it gets converted into acetyl CoA, it will get permission to enter into the powerhouse of the cell. Where the powerhouse of the cell? Yes, you have studied in your first chapter. Can you recall who is this? Yes, it is none other than your mitochondria. So where is this acetyl CoA going to enter? It's going to enter in the mitochondria. So how many molecules of pyruvic acid needs to be converted? Two molecules. So two molecules of acetyl CoA needs to be formed, right? So these two molecules will enter inside the mitochondria. And what is now going to happen inside the mitochondria? Let us understand. Inside the mitochondria, in fact, in the matrix, you remember this is called as the matrix of the mitochondria, right? In the matrix of the mitochondria, there is again a 10-step circular process which is going to occur. There will be a 10-step circular process which is going to occur, and in this 10th step, these acetyl CoAs are going to release carbon dioxide. So if you look into this particular process, there is no evolution of carbon dioxide. Yes, there is evolution of carbon dioxide over here, but release of carbon dioxide mainly takes place from where? The mitochondria. Now, carbon dioxide will be formed, getting the point. And in every step, there will be a specific enzyme that will be required for this interconversion. And what do we call this particular process as? We call this as Krebs cycle. I believe it is clear. Where is it occurring? In the matrix. Where is glycolysis occurring in the cell? Cytoplasm. Okay. Now what is going to happen next? See, Krebs cycle is going to produce so many different intermediates. And out of these intermediates, some of the intermediates would be used for synthesis of some important amino acids. Mitochondria helps in production of some important amino acids. So not everyone is supposed to be broken down. In fact, some of them are to be used for making something beautiful, that is amino acids. And you know, amino acids are basically the fundamental structural units of polypeptides, in fact the proteins. Now next, what is going to happen, please understand, in this process you will get some reduced coenzymes formed, like say for example NADH2 will be formed, then FADH2 would be formed, right? GTP would be formed. It's sort of like sister of ATP. We have discussed adenosine is basically a nitrogenous base that you will study in your upcoming class. Similarly, here what do we have? Guanosine triphosphate or guanosine triphosphate. So this guanosine triphosphate eventually would basically get directly converted into ATP. So it's equivalent to that. So these things, okay, will enter into a next process. And what is the name of that next process? That is electron transport system. And after they enter into this ETS, they will produce roughly close to 36 molecules of ATP. So if you look into the whole process, what becomes very interesting is at the end of complete breakdown of glucose, you are actually going to get from one molecule of glucose 36 molecules of ATP. So I believe you got an overview what is happening inside the cell. And this whole process is a part of a typical type of respiration, and this is what we call as aerobic respiration. Now, where is the oxygen used, sir? Oxygen is actually used in this process, which is electron transport system. Oxygen is actually used in this particular process to receive a particular electron, right? Now, the point that you need to understand here is after a glucose enters inside the cell, two molecules of pyruvic acid would be formed by first process, which is called as glycolysis. After that, this pyruvic acid will get converted into acetyl-CoA, and these acetyl-CoA eventually will enter into the mitochondria. That is in the matrix. Krebs cycle is going to occur using specific enzymes. They are going to produce some, reduced coenzymes as well as GTP, which eventually can be utilized in the process called electron transport system to give us a very important molecule of the cell. In fact, we call it the energy currency of the cell. What do we call it? ATP is commonly referred to as what? The energy currency of the cell, right? Now next, we are going to compare two oxidative processes. The respiration is an oxidation process, we have just now seen. Okay. Now respiration, what does it do? It is basically taking an organic compound and oxidizing those organic compounds. You know, organic compounds are basically made of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, right? So what is happening to the carbon? This is basically getting evolved in the process of by becoming carbon dioxide, and the hydrogen basically becomes water and gets released. So oxidation is occurring, right? So any organic compound should have CHHYO, right? That means a particular number of carbon, particular number of hydrogen, particular number of oxygen. Like we have seen in our glucose, there is C6, H12, O6, right? Say we can write N number over here. So there is a particular number of atoms which are present in organic compounds which acts as respiratory substrates. So their oxidation is basically going to release on complete oxidation, you will get these two things. Now we know if you burn candle, burning, if you are burning something, like say for example you are burning paper or you are burning a candle, okay, they are also organic compounds, right? They are also organic compounds, right? So burning of paper or burning of candles, excuse me, this is NE, right? Would basically be NE. So would basically release the same thing, carbon dioxide and water vapor, isn't it? So burning any organic compound also releases the same thing. So how are these two processes different from each other? So very quickly, let's see some basic differences in between both. So first, please remember respiration can only occur in living cells. It can never occur in dead cells, right? Burning, it occurs in non-living objects, isn't it? Non-living objects. Paper, candle, they are basically what? They are basically non-living objects. So this is the first point where you can differentiate the process. Now, do you require enzymes here? I told you a few minutes back. Enzymes are must. Do we require enzymes here? no enzymes are required. No enzymes are required here, right? Third important difference that you can see, energy is actually released step by step here. So gradual release of energy here, whereas here energy is released all at a time. So in an uncontrolled manner, unorganized manner, energy is getting released. So let's put this in the form of a point. So energy is released by or in step-by-step method, by step-wise gradual release. So there's a gradual release. Okay, energy is released by stepwise manner gradually. But when you're talking about this, what is happening here? Energy is released at once in one step. So energy released, the energy is released here at one go, or at one, or in one step rather. Okay. Now, if you move on to see some more differences, this will occur normally at your body temperature, right? But this process requires a little bit of higher temperature than your body temperature. So it will occur at body temperature, right? And when we are talking about this particular process, it occurs at much higher temperature. Okay, with respect to whom? Body temperature. You're getting the point, right? Moving on to another difference. Do you produce light here? Not exactly. Respiration you are doing, can you see any exact light production in your body? No, not at all. In fact, visible lights are not produced here. So no light is being produced here. But if you burn something, like say for example you're burning a candle or a paper, or might be if you're burning petrol or kerosene, which are also organic compounds, your fossil fuels. So eventually what you are going to find is light energy is produced here, or in fact light is produced here. So you can see production of light, right? So these are some basic differences which makes this biochemical process completely different from this simple chemical process. Once again, I'm going to tell you, this is a biochemical process. Why? Why is this a biochemical process? Because it is occurring in a biological system. Burning is basically a simple chemical process, right? Because it is going to occur in your physical world, and it's simply not going to occur inside the cell. I believe the differences are absolutely clear to you, right? Now let's move on to understand about uh, the differences, or in fact, let's first talk about the different types of respiration first. Types of respiration. So how many different types of respirations are there? Or in fact, respiration can be divided into how many types? Very well known to you. Yes. What are those? First one, we can talk about the first process as aerobic respiration, and the second one, anaerobic respiration. Right? So these are two vital processes which we have heard in our lower classes. I believe you remember. So let's recall. What is aerobic respiration. Aerobic respiration is basically complete oxidation of the respiratory substrate. So here, complete oxidation is going to occur, right? What is going to occur? Complete oxidation. Here, incomplete oxidation is going to occur. Incomplete oxidation is going to occur, right? So in aerobic, complete oxidation, incomplete oxidation. First thing. Second thing that you need to remember that this particular process occurs in presence of surplus quantity of oxygen only. If you cut the supply of oxygen, aerobic respiration will stop. But if you talk about anaerobic respiration, it exceptionally occurs in the absence or deficiency of oxygen, right? So this occurs in the presence of oxygen, this occurs in the absence of oxygen. I believe it is clear to you, right? So what is the next important point that we can find here? The next important point that we can find here is amount of ATP produced here. Amount of ATP produced here is much higher. But in this case, amount of ATP produced is much lower, or in fact very less. I believe it is clear. So after looking into this certain basic differences in between both of these processes, let's deal with this process in details now. So let's talk about aerobic respiration in details. So aerobic respiration, okay, respiration occurring in the presence of occurring in the presence of oxygen. Okay. Respiration occurring in the presence of oxygen, okay, is what we call as aerobic respiration, or as because oxygen is involved, we also call this as oxybiotic respiration. Getting the point? Oxygen is involved in the biological system for the respiration, so oxybiotic respiration. And the organism who performs this type of respiration, we commonly call them as aerobes. A-E-R-O-B-E-S. Aerobes. Aerobes are organisms. Okay, these are organisms who perform this process of respiration. Clear? Now, during aerobic respiration, glucose is completely oxidized. I already mentioned earlier in the difference. So, what are the end products that we are going to look into? So, if you remember, we have in the very first note, we have actually seen that glucose is basically getting oxidized. Remember? So, have a look over here. If you look into this, what you can see, this is your glucose. This is getting added up with whom the oxygen, and in the presence of oxygen, what is happening? Carbon dioxide is being produced, water in the form of vapor is being produced, energy in the form of ATP is being released. So this is actually representation of whom? Aerobic respiration. So let's write it down. Now please make a correction in your textbook. The oxygen is missing in your textbook. So please do make this correction. I believe it is in page number 67. So if you look into your book, you will find the aerobic respiration definition. By mistake, might be printing mistake. So I have written directly glucose getting converted to carbon dioxide, water and energy. So it's not correct. Glucose will bind with oxygen, okay, and eventually produce your carbon dioxide and produce your water and release your energy, right? So please do make this correction, right? Now let's talk about the second process. What was our second process? Our second process is anaerobic respiration. Anaerobic respiration. Now, this is very interesting type of process. Why? Because this is happening, or this is in fact occurring in the complete absence of oxygen. Do you remember I told you oxidation is directly related to respiration, and in anaerobic process we are not using oxygen. So what is the process by which oxidation is occurring here? The removal of hydrogen. So removal of hydrogen is going to take place here, and as a result, we call this process also as an oxidative process. Please don't get confused. Like if you're not adding oxygen, then how should we actually consider this particular process as oxidative process or oxidation? So this is how we do it, right? So let's define it. It's much less common. In fact, less energy is produced in this particular process. It's very, very uh, less preferred process of respiration by the cells. But in fact, if you want a short-term boost of energy, okay, this is a very lengthy process. If you want a short-term boost of energy, that is a lot of ATP you require, right? What is going to happen is this anaerobic respiration is going to getting the point. So respiration is going to occur in absence of oxygen, where glucose is going to get what? Oxidized, right? Glucose is going to get oxidized. Now, please understand, as oxygen is not involved, we call this as N, means without. Oxy means oxygen, biotic, that is life. So N-oxybiotic process is the other name of anaerobic respiration. I believe it is clear to everyone. Now, let's understand what are the different types of anaerobic respiration which can actually occur first. Secondly, let us understand which type of organism prefers this, or who actually has this particular process as the main process of respiration. So let's look into this. Now, the organisms who perform this process, we call them as what? Aerobes. Now, what should we call them as? Anaerobes, right? So, anaerobic respiration is basically seen in organisms which are called as anaerobes. I believe it is clear till this much. Now let's give some examples of anaerobes. Now, who are those anaerobes? It is commonly seen that certain bacteria prefer this particular respiration. Okay. Now, there are anaerobic bacteria which are very commonly used for fermenting different types of food substrates. Okay, we will talk about that. And there's an interesting thing which is coming up. You have a very well-known unicellular fungi. What is the name of this? Is a fungi, right? So it's a unicellular fungi. What is the name of it? Yeast, right? So yeast is also very, very well known for this particular process. We will see. There is an interesting thing coming up now. Even your muscles, okay, when you are doing any strenuous exercise, like say for example, you have participated in heavy weightlifting, or might be you are doing say 200-meter or 500-meter or 600-meter race suddenly, then your muscles they will require a lot of energy for contraction, isn't it? Now, aerobic process, I said it yields a lot of energy, but the problem is it is a lengthy process. You need short-term energy. So muscles, they get or they fall short of energy, that is your ATP. So in that situation, they cannot stop working. So they switch over to anaerobic respiration. And when they do this, they are going to produce some byproducts which will stop your muscle contraction and make your muscle fatigue. So we will see this, right? So these are some examples where anaerobic respirations usually occur. So if you are asked in your exam, like give some examples where anaerobic respiration is commonly seen, you can mention them. Now, please remember, anaerobic respiration is also commonly referred to as fermentation process, right? So let's quickly look into some very, very important types, dependent on the cell. As I already told you that it depends on the type of the cell, that which type of anaerobic respiration is going to occur there. Say, for example, we are talking about bacteria, right? Or say, for example, if we are talking about fungi, like we have said, yeast. So what they are going to do is very, very interesting. Glucose, they are going to get it converted into ethyl alcohol. And along with this, they are also going to produce carbon dioxide. So how many molecules of ethyl alcohols are being produced? 2 molecules. Okay. And how many molecules of carbon dioxide is being produced? 2. So glucose is not utilizing what? Oxygen here. But they are producing what? Carbon dioxide. But did they completely break themselves? No. What has been formed? C2H5OH has been formed. Now, how many molecules has been formed? 2 molecules has been formed. So what you can see, 2 molecules of 2 carbon containing alcohol has been produced, which is called as ethyl alcohol. And at the end of the process, actually, you get 4 molecules of ATP. Do you remember how many ATP we got from single molecule of glucose in aerobic respiration? Approximately 36 molecules of ATP. And how many are we getting here? Just 4. So less, right? So if it is very less amount of ATP which has been produced here, then should this be a preferred method for respiration? No. But see, it's a very, very rapid process of yielding this 4 ATP. So production of this 4 ATP is going to eventually take very short time. Okay, and that is why they opt for this process. Now I have been telling you this is very interesting. Why is this interesting, sir? Now this yeast, this gentleman is extensively used, you will study, we have a chapter, extensively used in the production of alcohol by the virtue of its capability to perform anaerobic respiration. So industrial production of alcohol, okay, depends mainly on this capability of yeast to get them converted into ethyl alcohol. That is, glucose getting converted into ethyl alcohol. Now, depends what you are fermenting, and accordingly different types of alcoholic beverages can be formed. But don't forget, carbon dioxide is also produced simultaneously. So this is commonly seen where? In bacteria, in fungi, that is like yeast. But in your muscles, we don't see this. We see a different, completely different, situation. So in your muscle, what is going to happen is, especially in which muscle? Skeletal muscle. Please remember, the muscles which are attached to your bones, not in all muscles. This is also very important. Not in all muscles. Your heart never becomes tired, isn't it? That is cardiac muscle. So when I'm using the word muscle, please be very careful. I'm talking about specifically which muscle? Skeletal muscle. And these are the muscles which can basically become fatigue. Isn't it? Fatigue is the incapability to contract, right? So incapability to contract here means you are no more able to contract or move any body part, or say for example the part which has become fatigue will eventually not allow or restrict movement. Getting the point? So what is fatigue? Is this clear? Now why is this fatigue condition seen in skeletal muscle but not seen in smooth muscles? Okay, not seen in cardiac muscles, right? Because the simple answer is they do not opt for the anaerobic respiration. So let's see what is going to happen here. Now they are supposed to break down the glucose in addition to oxygen, but there is no time. They require a lot of ATP. There is a shortage of ATP. So what they are going to do is they are directly going to get them converted into lactic acid, and there will be no carbon dioxide produced. What will not be produced? Carbon dioxide will not be produced. How many molecules of lactic acid will be produced? 2 molecules, because lactic acid is 3 carbon compound. And along with this, 4 ATPs will also be produced. So I believe till this much it is absolutely clear to everyone, right? Now, if you look into the formula of lactic acid, it becomes more clear that C2H4OH. Okay, this is the molecular formula. As it is an acid, it will have a carboxylic group, right? Excuse me. So, glucose getting converted to lactic acid. Is this clear? And these lactic acid, how many molecules are being formed? Two molecules are being formed. Now, what happens is this lactic acid is an acid, right? So, what is the problem, sir? The problem is acid lowers the pH. Lowers the pH. You know what is pH, right? So, as the pH is lowered in the muscle cell, okay, what is going to happen in the muscle cell? The enzymes who are involved in muscle contraction, they will stop working. Now, as they stop working, the muscle contraction will not occur. This is the reason why your muscles become fatty. Now, sir, can we do it next day? I mean, can I move my muscles next day? Can the muscles contract next day? Yes, very much. How? Because once you come to rest, this lactic acids will be taken by the blood to your liver. And after they are taken to your liver, they will be broken down over there and complete oxidation will be done over there to release carbon dioxide. So removal of this is done by a separate process. If you are interested, you can look into Cori's cycle. Okay. So Cori's cycle is basically the process by which this lactic acid is ultimately removed from your muscle, restoring activity of your skeletal muscle. I believe it is clear to everyone. So we have seen two classical examples, and this process, as because what is being produced here? Please tell me what is being produced here? Yes, alcohol is being produced. So what should we call this particular process as? We will call this as alcoholic fermentation. Alcoholic fermentation. Okay, this is called as alcoholic fermentation. So if this is called as alcoholic fermentation, this is also fermentation. Okay, fermentation is a process which is occurring mainly in the absence of oxygen. So tell me, what should this be called as? This should be called as lactic acid fermentation. Okay, I believe this concept of fermentation has given you an idea that fermentation can be of two types: alcoholic fermentation, and the second is what? The second is lactic acid fermentation. Okay, now going back to aerobic respiration. Okay, we will now move on to aerobic respiration and we will see the details of glycolysis slightly, and we will see eventually how the glycolysis leads to the Krebs cycle that I have already given you an idea over here, that once the glucose enters in the process of aerobic respiration, glucose will be broken down in the cytoplasm of the cell by glycolysis process, and this process requires no oxygen. So let it be aerobic respiration, let it be anaerobic respiration, glycolysis is a compulsory step. Only after the formation of pyruvic acid, if oxygen is present, then this pathway will be taken. If there is no oxygen present, then what pathway should be taken? Either if it is, say, an animal cell, like we have seen skeletal muscles, okay, lactic acid formation will take place. So where is lactic acid formation going to take place? It is going to take place in animal cell, right? And if it is a microbe like bacteria or yeast over there, what should be formed? Ethyl alcohol will be produced, right? Now, here the production of ATP is very, very less. Okay, so we are going to look into the process of glycolysis slightly in details in our next day's class. So thank you everyone, and please stay safe. Bye bye.